Okay, so good day everyone. No? Moving on with our part 3 for our chapter 3 again. This is consumers in their social and cultural setting. So our topic for today would be subculture and their influence to consumption. Okay, so ito na tayo sa pinaka-basic part or dun sa pinaka-smallest part of the whole culture. We will be discussing about subcultures. So, subculture is a part of culture containing the important features of the main culture. So, if we have the main culture, we also have yung subcultures, which is mas defined yung ating mga features no, for that specific group of people. Now, in this lesson for today, we shall highlight on the subcultural context, types of subculture. Later, we will be discussing that, the influence on consumer behavior as well as the marketing implications of the concept of subculture. So we will be having some examples later on how marketers or businesses should use the concept of subculture in adapting or creating a product that is suited for the customers or that specific culture. Now, marketing takes place within a given culture. Not everyone in the same country or society shares the same behavioral pattern. Okay? That's why we have to study yung subcultures kasi they have that specific pattern when it comes to consuming goods or spending for a specific type of product, which is marketers should identify that pattern of the dominant or main culture. Identifying a subculture may provide a business with a segment of a market that it can develop. Okay? Each subculture, like a larger culture, has a distinctive values, beliefs, and attitude that the business must understand if he wants to effectively exploit these subcultures. So as a business, you want to identify the specific patterns when it comes to values, beliefs in that area or in that subculture, then you now modify your product or service that is fit to the needs and wants of that specific subculture. Yun yung goal natin as a business naman in the first place. Marketers are interested in identifying any subculture as a potential market for their products, especially for big companies. Considering the products or the marketing strategies of these big companies, hindi naman yan standard. For example, sa Philippines naman, hindi standard ang approach nila sa buong Pilipinas. Usually, what they do is they understand, they study a specific subculture or a culture, they modify the product or even the commercial itself, diba, to fit to the needs of that specific subculture. Simplest way na pwedeng lang gawin is through dialect, diba? Have you encountered a commercial na kinonvert sa Ilocano? Diba? That is one way on modifying your product to fit, diba, dun sa subculture. Dun sa dialect, dun sa text, ginagawa nilang Ilocano. Okay? Alright, so in aggregation of people by demographic variables has long been done by marketing research staffs. This is, of course, a way to study and measure the buying potential of a subculture. Now, by this time, we should understand that subcultural differences do exist and are responsible for differences in consumption patterns of people with different subcultures. Okay, so sige, let's define what is a subculture. And by definition, every culture contains a subculture. So we have a major culture, then after the major culture, meron pang distinct segments uli yan, yun na yung ating subcultures. Subcultures defined as groups that shares the values and even artifacts of a larger society, but also have distinctive practices, preferences, and beliefs. Subculture may be defined in terms of region. Okay? For example, sa Pilipinas, diba, we have different regions. We have 17 regions in the Philippines alone. Rural or urban residents, ethnic background, and even religion. It is thus a segment of a culture that shares distinguishing patterns of behavior. Later on, we will be having examples dyan. Okay, dito pa lang sa Cordillera, no, we have different subcultures. No? Let's use this as an example. In the Cordilleran region, this is the ancestral homeland of the Cordillera indigenous people, collectively referred to as Igorots. So the culture is Igorots. But there are 7 major groups or people in the Cordillera. Ito na yung ating subcultures. Namely as the Kangkanais, the Bontocs, the Kalingas, Ifugaos, Tinguians, please forgive my pronunciation, the Apayao or Isnag, and the Ibaloy. Okay? So, Igorots is the main culture, and these are the subcultures. Okay? So, subculture for marketing purposes as any cultural patterning that preserves important features of the dominant society but provides values and lifestyle on its own, no, per subculture. Subcultures are based on the factors as race, or in the case of Cordillera, yung tribes. Also have nationality, kung mas larger yung ating culture, religion, urban or rural identification, and so forth and so on. It is expected that membership in each different subcultures would provide its own set of specific beliefs, values, customs, and attitudes. No? Yan. Kung babalik tayo dito, practices will differ from Kangkanais, from Bontocs, from Kalingas, from Ibaloy. Di ba? They have different beliefs, they have different practices. Alright, so let us now categorize the major subcultural categories, especially in the Philippines. Ayan, so here is a chart. Ayan. We will categorize the subcultures based on ethnicity, ayan, religion, region, ayan, huwag tayong malito sa religion and region, based on age, if you are married or single, based on gender, occupation, and social class. So here are some examples. For ethnicity, yan, kung worldwide ang ating pag-uusapan, we have the English, Chinese, Arab, Asians. For religion, we have Muslim, Hindu, Christian, region, Northern, Southern, Central. Age, yan yung age group natin. We have the teens, middle age, elderly. Ayan, on the marketing standpoint, that's why we did not consider yung mga toddlers or child. Syempre, they do not have the buying capacity yet. No? So, on business side, we will start dun sa teens kasi dun pa lang sila nagsa-start mag-purchase ng products. Singles, unmarried individuals, gender, of course, we have the male and female. Ayan, occupation, ito yung trabaho. If you are a teacher, doctor, engineer, lawyer, accountant, etc. Social class naman, upper class, middle class, lower class, or even the poverty line. And let's start with the ethnicity. Okay. Ethnic subculture is based on the nationality of one's ancestors who have migrated to a new country. No, kung pangmalakihan itong ethnicity natin. One interest in ethnic goods and services expands rapidly as one tends to better understand and associate with his ethnic origin. Okay. In the Philippines, ethnicity pa lang napakadami. Ayan. Ethnic subculture provides a psychological source of group identification, especially if this person grew up in this community. Diba, ang culture naman sometimes it is being taught. Kung ito yung kinalakahan ng isang tao, of course, he will be adapting to the beliefs and the attitudes of that specific group. That's why it is his or her identity then. An individual gains a sense of identity as he or she interacts with the other members of that ethnic group. Yan, napipick up po natin yan. The interaction increases intimacy among the members and they feel good and identify themselves with a distinct group. Ayan, di ba? Yung mga lagi nating narinig, proud to be Cordilleran, proud to be Igorot. So, in the Philippines, we have different ethnic groups. No? Out of many, kasi napakadami po sa Pilipinas. Here are some well-known from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Yan, we have the Ilocanos, we have the Igorots, we have the Kapampangans, we We have the popular Tagalogs. In Visayas, we have the Bicolanos. And in Mindanao, we have the Maranaos. These are just some examples, no? Actually, we have, I think, more than 10 or more than 20 ethnic groups in the Philippines. Ayan. Now, if you will try to understand the spending patterns of these people, mapapansin nyo na iba-iba po sila. Kunyari, meron nga tayong lagi sinasabi, no? Among of these ethnic groups that I have included in my example, sino dito ang pinakakuripot? Yan. Hindi daw siya kuripot. Dapat ang term na ginagamit natin is matipid. No? Hindi daw kuripot. Diba? Sila yung mga Ilocanos. Sino naman dito yung group of people na medyo mahilig sa mga, let's say, branded items? Ayan, laging may mga latest gadgets. Laging gusto nagre-restaurant. Ayan. Sabi nila, yung mga Tagalogs. Ayan. Nakikita na natin, di ba, yung mga differences. O sino dito yung, this has been a, circulating joke lang naman. Pero I think it's somewhat true. Sino dito yung bibili ng mamahalin na sasakyan, pero ipang harvest lang or lalagyan ng mga gulay-gulay. Di ba? Imbis na pang forma nila, pang Japorms nila, ginagamit nila for business. No? They are generating profit, no, by buying these types of vehicles such as yung Strada, yung mga Conquest, etc. Ayan, yung mga Igorots. Okay? Ayan. As you can see, we have different spending patterns. We have different spending behaviors, consumer behaviors. Ethnic subculture. Now, moving on, no, sa ating next na subculture, ito naman yung religious. Another important na subculture na we have to consider in the Philippines. Dahil tayo ay Filipino people, we are very religious na. An individual's religious affiliation influences to a great extent of his consumption patterns. For example, Muslims, ayan, they buy and consume certain specific food items heavily during the month of Ramadan, okay? And gifts during the Eid ul-Fitr. For Islam, di ba, they are following yung specific na diet. Correct me if I'm wrong, pero yung halal food, di ba, very sacred itong type of food na dapat nilang sundan for Muslim. Ayan. Again, even nandito pala. Islam discourages its followers the consumption of certain items, no, such as bawal sa kanilang alak and even yung pork, no. That's why if you have, let's say you are a restaurant, may pumasok na Muslim. Okay, pipilit mo ba yung menu mo na pork if the consumption of pork is against their beliefs, no? Sa kanilang religious beliefs? Of course not. For businesses, we really have to be sensitive, especially when it comes to religious affiliations ng tao. Dahil as much as possible, the last thing we really want to do is to offend someone. That's why, again, we must consider yung religious subculture. In Baguio City, we have a specific na restaurant who offer halal foods to cater to the needs of ating mga Muslim brothers and sisters. Ayan. Okay? Religious subculture. In the Philippines din, majority ng religion natin dito is Catholic, pero hindi 100%. Not only 83% is significant. Yun ang Catholic dito sa Philippines. Followed by yung ating mga Protestantism. Ayan, 9.13%. Third natin is yung ating mga Islam brothers and sisters, 6.01%. Be followed by other Christians. Ito na yung mga INC, Jehovah's, etc. 3.39%. And none, ito yung mga atheists, kung sabihin nga natin, only 0.02% of the population. At speaking of atheists, wag nating sabihin na mga satanista to mga to, no? Kasi ito yung common notion natin. If we met with someone who does not have any religious belief, sinasabihan na natin na satanista. Siyempre hindi sila satanista, no? Wala lang silang pinapaniwalaan na religion. It doesn't mean na masama silang tao. Okay? And we have the tribal region. Okay? Or yung mga tribe religions natin, 0.01%. Ayan. Ayan. Majority pa rin natin, of course, from the Catholic. Laki, no? That's why Philippines is a Christian country, sabi nga nila. Kasi majority of the population talaga is nasa Catholic. Alright? How about the regional subcultures? The way people live their lifestyles may also vary according to where they live from, which part of the country they have moved to. Okay? Ang pinakasimple na example natin dito is yung term na ginagamit natin sa Pilipinas, yung taga-probinsya, taga-syudad. Okay? Siyempre, mga taga-probinsya, they have a much simpler lifestyle. Diba? They spend their money na just to fulfill yung mga basic needs. At okay na po yun. But people from the city, ito na yung medyo, if I may say, mga maluluho. Because our exposure, no, tayong mga taga-syudad, is mas madami. When it comes to brands, gadgets, etc., mas exposed po tayo as compared sa mga tao na sa province. Therefore, ang ating spending patterns is very different. Okay? So, meron tayong budget for gadgets, meron tayong budgets for restaurants, mga branded clothes, yung mga mamahaling pagkain, even yung when it comes to recreation, di ba may budget tayo pang nood ng sine, or pang hotel, or pang bakasyon. Ayan, so different spending patterns. Ayan. In the Philippines, aside from having 17 regions, no, kinategorize na rin tayo based on the kung ano yung pwesto natin sa Pilipinas. For example, we have people from Northern Luzon, Central Luzon, Southern Luzon. We have from sa Visayas naman yung Visayas region. Meron rin tayong taga Mindoro, Palawan, and of course from Mindanao. Okay? Ayan. So, based on geographical location, syempre, different spending patterns din. Okay? Alright, so that is the regional subculture. Now, next would be the age. Okay, ito naman. Let's categorize naman Filipino people by age. It is likely that those who belong to the teenage group will behave quite differently from those who are in the middle age and elderly. So, teenagers are likely to be influenced by more popular heroes or yung kanilang idols, no, or hinahangaan na vloggers, kasi I think this is the number one influencer today, mga vloggers eh. They see them as heroes and heroines and will display more materialistic lifestyle. So ano ang ini-invest ng mga teenagers ngayon? More on, babalik tayo, gadgets, no? Yun yung mga materialistic. Sa mga fans dito ng mga, let's say, babalik tayo sa BTS, ano yung mga pinagkakagastusan yung mga BTS stans, sabi nila. Di ba yung mga merchandise, mga merch ng mga favorite groups natin, no? For teenagers, no, it's okay for them to spend thousands of pesos, no, to buy collections or yung mga BTS merch natin. Kasi that is their spending patterns. Pero once that they move, no, from teenager to let's say middle age, yung priorities natin when it comes to spending money nag-iiba. So the elderly subculture consists of people who have gone on retirement. Ayan, ito medyo matanda na. And whose regular income generating activities have ceased. Okay, punta tayo dito sa age group para maano natin. Alright. Siguro nandito kayo sa Gen Z. More materialistic kayo dito sa Gen Z. Kami naman nasa millennials. So, nandito na kami sa middle age. Our priority now is the needs and wants of our families. Ayan. Para sa mga anak tulad ko, syempre, basic needs of our children, dun muna yung ating pinagkakagastusan. For Gen X, ito na yung mga nakapag-build na. So, their spending patterns is more on assets, no? Investments, real estate, lupa, bahay, mga sasakyan. So, dun na pupunta yung kanilang pera. And for baby boomers, ito na yung ating mga elderly, of course, retirement. Ano ba ang kailangan gastusin sa retirement? Medicines, yung mga daily expenditures. Pag ikaw ay retired na, especially if you do not have a stable source of income, since you are retired, or for those na nakapag-ipon ng retirement fund ginagastos nila to experience the world. So nagta-travel sila, ano pa ba ginagawa? Ano yun yan? Nagta-travel. For some kasi I have seen yung mga elderly na talagang extreme ang gusto nilang mga experiences. So gusto nila nagba-bungee jumping or nag-hiking or yung mga extreme activities talaga. Ayan. May nakita pa nga ako na ano nang tawag din yung parachute? Skydiving. No? Ayan. So nandun na pupunta yung kanilang pera based on age. Alright, ito na. I think most of you are in this category, no? The single subculture consists of unmarried individuals. Now, this subculture is found to be increasing, particularly in the urban and semi-urban areas. No? Bakit nga ba? Ano ba ang reason kung bakit nag-i-increase ang number of people who are single? Especially for millennials. Marami po ang millennials na they prefer to be single, no, rather than married. Ayan. Few reasons are associated with growing size of subcultural singles. A subculture of the singles, they could be delaying marriage. Dati, in the Philippines, pwede ka na magpakasal if you are 20 years old. Sometimes even younger. Pero now, ang mga nagpapakasal, ang average, especially for my group, is nasa 30 years old na. Ayan, yung 28, 29, 30. Sometimes 30, 35, even 40. Yun na yung right time to be married. Ito na yung delaying marriage, postponement of marriage, higher divorce rates. We can really see na sometimes pag nakarinig ka ng nagdi-divorce, it is something na very if I may say na malaking scandal sa isang pamilya. But now, if you hear about divorce, parang it is something na normal, no? In the Philippines, we do not have divorce, we have annulment. Yet, parang normal na lang siya nangyayari. Yan. Inability to find a suitable source of earning to bear family expenditures and so on. Again, going back sa example ng millennials, marami ang pinaprioritize muna ang career over marriage. Kasi we need to have that stable source of income first bago tayo mag-start ng pamilya. And kung iisipin natin in the Philippines, hindi po biro maghanap ng isang permanenteng trabaho. Marami ka pang pagdadaanan. Yan. So, we prefer muna to have that permanent source of income, stable source of income, bago tayo magpamilya. And these reasons ang nakaka-contribute kung bakit marami po ang single. Hindi lang po yung hindi makahanap ng boyfriend, hindi po yun lang Hindi lang po yun ang rason kung bakit marami single. Marami po there are several reasons why people want to stay single. And I'm sure most of you will experience that once you nakarating ka na dun sa pagkatapos ng teenage, nandun ka na sa young adult, may experience nyo to. Okay. So next subculture natin is the gender. I think this is the simplest. Male, female, men, women. So men and women consume different types of products and respond differently to marketing appeals. So for men, they are influenced more by aggressiveness, competitiveness, something na tough, yung pangtigasin, independence, self-confidence, and masculinity. Okay? Yung panglalaki, sabi nga nila. So, pag lalaki, di ba, unang nakikita, sports, mga sasakyan, yan yung mga panglalaki. While for women naman, they're influenced by neatness, yung malinis, gentleness, tactfulness, talkativeness, and even femininity. Okay? Yan, male or female. Dito pa lang sa color Di ba? Pink, mga light colors, soft colors, mostly pang babae. Strong colors, yung mga red, yan mga ganyan, strong red, black, gold, silver, pang lalaki. So we also have the occupational subculture, the group of people sharing the same occupation. Ayan. So people of different occupation may constitute occupational subcultures, such as for doctors, group of doctors. A defense officer or a general will show different purchase behavior than someone belonging on the civilians society. Another example, doctors may look at the nutritional aspect while buying a food item kasi it's part of their Di ba? It's part of their occupation, their profession. That's why ito, yung mga nasa medical field natin, pag bibili sila ng pagkain, lagi silang nakatingin sa nutritional facts. Ayan. Businesses should recognize the differences in attitudes and behaviors among people of different profession. Okay? Siyempre, if your profession, let's say, is, yun nga, kung doctors, more on healthy foods, or even dietitians, more on healthy foods. But for military, ayan, ano bang spending patterns ng military? If you notice, no, since military, one of the highest paying jobs no, in the Philippines, usually ang ini-invest nila agad is properties. Ayan. Doon agad sila bumabawi sa properties. For teachers naman, let's say teachers such as myself, we will spend on equipment that will help us to deliver our lessons more efficiently, more effective. So, siguro mag-invest kami on laptops, on gadgets, on teaching materials. Yan. Okay? Occupational subculture. And we have the last, ito na yung social class subculture. Ayan, naalala niyo pa ba yung social class natin? Social class may also be used as a determinant of subculture differences. Now, people belonging to the subculture of rich will display altogether different buying patterns as compared to those middle class or even on those nasa poverty line. So, subculture of poverty consists of people living below that poverty line as they have limited educational opportunities, they develop different attitudes, outlooks, and even motivation, no? Resulting them in having different buying behaviors on the part of these individuals. And so again, ibabalik ko tong natin from Rappler. Ito yung percentage sharing natin when it comes to social class sa Philippines. Only 0.1% of the total population is nasa upper class. 25.2% middle class. Karamihan, majority, 74.3 is nasa lower class. Yan. Yung mga nasa poverty line natin is nasa 12.6% for the income poor, and food poor naman is nasa 7.9%. Ayan. Napakadami nun yung nasa lower class natin. So, kung example natin is when it comes to food, ano ba ang priority ng mga nasa poverty line? Would they check dun sa mga nutritional facts, no? Of course not. Kung ano mura, yun na. Diba? Dito patok na patok yung ating mga delata, mga noodles, mga pansit canton. If you see, di ba na medyo tagilid sila when it comes to nutritional facts, nutritional values. Yet, since ito ang affordable, ito ang bibilihin ng mga tao from this red line or sa poverty line. Pero, when we go now sa middle class or sa upper class, they now have the luxury to check if this food is healthy or not. If not, di nila bibilihin. They might spend more on food na mas healthy. Yan. Lower class, maybe somewhat in the middle. They have budget for, sometimes they have budget for healthy foods, sometimes wala. Especially nung nag-pandemic, no, na medyo dumami pa ang lower class natin dahil marami na wala ng trabaho. So, if we go back dun sa food, they will prioritize yung to satisfy the hunger rather than eating healthy alternatives, no? Ayan. So, differences when it comes to buying patterns. Alright, so that is the last chapter, no? The last part for chapter 3. So, once again, yung mga instructions natin, make sure to follow. And I will see you on the last chapter, no? Yung chapter 4. So, thank you for listening and goodbye.